Standard, Fleto, I guess his appearance heralded by an early kill. That's what we call a one clip.
Seoul Dynasty has one of the best Widowmaker players in the Overwatch League. In their recent game against New York Excelsior, they were lucky enough to get one of the best Widowmaker maps in Overwatch, Ilios Ruins. Seoul lost the round in the game against New York, but the Ilios Ruins game specifically demonstrates Seoul's biggest flaws and why they're struggling to find the same success they did in Stage 1. It also demonstrates how Overwatch is still a game primarily about teamwork and not just getting a quad on Widowmaker every fight. All you need to know about Ilios Ruins is that it's a big, flat map with a recessed control point in the center. It has long sightlines that make it incredible for Widowmakers. Often, it's almost impossible to win this map without either your own counter Widow or a team built to counter her together. It's just that good of a map for her. So when Seoul got Ruins against New York, I think a lot of people assumed they had already won with a skilled player like Fleta on their team. All he has to do is win the Widow 1v1 and it's basically an easy win. But you can immediately see that New York planned for this. They knew this would be Fleta's map. New York doesn't run their own Widow and instead opts for a traditional dive composition with Tracer and Genji as the DPS. Even the casters were surprised that they started the map this way, but it was clear New York didn't want to give up their own star player Sabiolbi on Tracer. He plays Widow, but not at the level he plays Tracer. Given the high ground that Fleta can have, the low cooldown grappling hook for escape, and the fact that Seoul has a Mercy, it's almost impossible for a Tracer to deal with a Widow on her own. That means that New York set themselves up to either work together to kill Fleta, or to dismantle the rest of his team before he kills theirs, the latter of which is pretty risky against a player like him. Knowing this, Seoul built their comp around Peel. They have a slightly less traditional dive comp but with the positional strategy to peel for anyone that New York dives on and to punish the fact that they have to use important cooldowns like Winston Leap and D.Va boosters to get to Fleta's Widow. Throughout the game, Seoul plays spread out. Their D.Va, Winston, and Tracer keep their movement ability cooldowns ready until either Fleta gets a pick or New York dives on someone. What Seoul didn't expect was how safe and strategic New York would play and how little Fleta would do in the few openings he got. The game starts out rough for New York. I don't know if it was miscommunication or panic, but their Winston makes a bad dive towards Fleta and gets punished for the obvious mistake and Seoul cleans up from there. With a pro Widowmaker, the pro Widowmaker, you can't make mistakes like that, especially when his team is ready to peel like Seoul's. Seoul caps the point and sets up what should have been an easy hold. It's very hard to get to a Widowmaker on Ruins once her team has the point. Look how far it would take a Tracer or a Genji to actually get to her. It's impossible to do without taking serious damage or losing someone. That is, unless you force bad positioning by the enemy team. Meko does just that with this incredible zoning D.Va bomb that also catches Seoul's Mercy and Valkyrie and their Tracer. But it also leaves no sightlines for Fleta on Widow to get shots in as the fight unfolds. All of his teammates have to hide inside the point and New York cleans up. The next fight begins with New York making a critical mistake of peeking at Fleta's Widowmaker. He of course hits the headshot on Arc's Lucio, and Seoul, now with a Lucio of their own, dives in off of the pick. But so does New York, and they have two mobile DPS players that don't have to worry about sightlines like Widow. New York's Zenyatta pops his Transcendence, and they dive onto Seoul's Jaehong, who also has Transcendence, and force it out. Fleta tries to find a pick in the chaos, but with the big tanks and a mobile Genji, he can't get enough damage in. Meanwhile, Sabiolvi's Tracer sneaks up to Fleta and eliminates him in one clip. New York turns a losing fight into a winning one simply by utilizing the speed and focus of their dive. They made Seoul react to them and win the fight for it. New York specifically made it very hard for Fleta to get a shot in and for Seoul's Tracer to find a one clip of his own. There's simply no time for Seoul to react properly despite New York being down a player. Ideally, Seoul would have did their own partial dive onto New York's Zenyatta, but considering they have a Widowmaker and not a Genji, they have to find the opportunity to take the fight in the open so Fleta can dish out damage. New York didn't give them that chance. New York's strategy to starve Fleta of positional openings continues from there. New York sends their Genji onto Fleta and you can see Seoul's plan actually working here. Zumba's D.Va peels quickly for Fleta and kills the Genji. If you look at the ultimates at the top, you can see that both teams are pretty equal, but it's important to note that running Widowmaker over Genji means you have one less offensive ult that ends in kills. Infrasight is great, but it's not guaranteed to lead to kills, so Seoul has to rely more on Fleta's mechanical skill. This, again, takes time when you're against a team that isn't playing stupidly out in the open. The tanks of New York dive once again onto Jaehong Zenyatta, who again is inside of a room that Fleta can't snipe into. Instead of collapsing the entire team onto them, Seoul sends only their D.Va, who can't do anything against Sabiolbi's Sticky. Once Zumba is demech'd, the fight is a lot more even than it was a second ago. Every moment and every pick that New York gets puts more pressure and odds against Fleda's Widow. As you can see in this rare moment where New York gives him open shots, Fleda can hit them, but considering the point is already at 90+%, it was all way too late. Seoul caps a point, but New York apparently sees kills that we can't see via the spectator cam. Fleda made a mistake somewhere and Saebyeolbi finds him, and once you get rid of the Widow, the rest of Seoul is easy to clean up. Jaehong dies at 70% to Transcendence earlier and comes back to a sticky death at 90%. Because of how passive Seoul plays and how decisive the fights are, he has no time to really charge it up. Transcendence is vital to their comp for sustain while they wait for picks and to at least match New York's own Transcendences. New York continues to clean up and take the match and the game. Seoul makes huge mistakes here. They position themselves in such a way that let New York dive them. They sent one tank to peel and one tank to dive, and when you're running D.Va and Winston, they have to work together because they're squishy on their own. And lastly, they relied far too much on picks from either Fleda or Jaehong, leaving Munchkin's Tracer left to just help tanks out and look for already weak targets. Fleda is an incredible player, but nobody can consistently get tons of picks each fight. It's far too risky, and it's unfair to Fleda. This game also shows a general stubbornness by Seoul and other Overwatch League teams that don't like switching their hero picks up drastically mid-game. They tend to stick to whatever they practiced and planned and lose if it doesn't work. None of this is how Overwatch really works. Just look at how much the Los Angeles Gladiators switch up their strategies and compositions mid-game. They play as a team and don't build everything around one good player. Seoul wants to brute force their way through excellent mechanics alone, and it's not working, at least with the current meta. Smarter teams like New York will find that weakness, exploit it, and win every time. If you like this video, please consider subscribing for more like it, and let me know if this is something you want to see more of too. And as always, thanks for watching.